I too would like to welcome you, and I also would like to welcome our new Kriya Yoga initiates this weekend, who had their first Kriya ceremony last night. In the Ray's reading, it mentioned the Lord's Prayer, and so I would like to read from Whispers from Eternity, this book of prayer demands, and I'll go in deeper this talk, what we mean by demand. But before I read the Yogananda's spiritual interpretation of the Lord's Prayer, I thought I would say this Lord's Prayer because this is how I was taught to pray, if I can remember it. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. And is the kingdom, the power, and the glory yours never. I didn't learn that addendum when I grew up. So here is the spiritual interpretation of the Lord's Prayer from Whispers from Eternity. O Heavenly Father, Mother, Friend, Beloved God, may the halo of thy presence spread over all minds. May the religion of matter worship be converted into loving, direct worship of thee. Since without thy power to love, we cannot truly love anything, may we love thee first and above everything else. May the heavenly kingdom of bliss, where thou dwellest, manifest itself with all its divine qualities on earth, and may all lands be freed from limitations, imperfections, and miseries. Let thy kingdom within us manifest itself without. Father, leave us not in the pit of temptations, into which we fell by the misuse of thy gift of reason. When we become freer and stronger, should it be thy wish to test us, to see whether we love thee more than any temptation. Then, Father, make thyself more tempting than temptation. O Father, if it be thy wish to test us, help us keep our willpower strong enough to meet thy tests. Give us our daily bread, food, health, and prosperity for the body, efficiency for the mind, and above all, thy wisdom and love for our souls. Teach us to deliver ourselves, with thy help, from the meshes of ignorance, which we have woven through our own carelessness. So our topic today is, what is the best way to pray? And Yogananda, well, as I was saying, I was brought up to pray in such a way as using the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and other prayers, more formal prayers. And of course, we were always taught to pray for others, but there wasn't any real technique involved. It just says pray for them. And that usually meant closing your eyes and sending something mentally out to that person or that situation that needed prayers. So we're now in Dwapara Yuga, the age of energy, the age of more spiritual consciousness coming to our planet. We have a different approach now, a different understanding because of the teachings that are being ushered into this new age of consciousness. And Yogananda said our prayers too are different. In Kali Yuga, people prayed. And the time of Kali Yuga was a time of more dark mentality, spiritual ignorance. Things were more fixed. And the prayers in that time, he said, were more that of beggary. For example, if someone was praying during that time, maybe their prayer was more, God out there somewhere in some distant place, maybe could you please help me? I'm begging you. Can I have a little bit of this for me? And it's like, well, I'm a wretched sinner. Maybe if I don't sin enough, maybe you can grant me my desire for me. And Yogananda said that now is the time when our prayers should not be beggary prayers. Those are a medieval approach. But they should be more demands. Because I demand as thy child, Father, Mother, thy inheritance. I am a part of thee. Everything that you have, I also have. So I was once talking to a group about this approach of demanding from God, and they thought that seems a little kind of forceful. And I could kind of see what they meant. I imagined in my mind, you go to a restaurant and the table behind you is somebody slaps their hand on the table. I demand a refund. My steak was undercooked or something like that. And the waiter goes up and says, that's your right. You're right. I will refund your money. But a demand said in that way has a sense of anger and frustration out of it. And the demand that Yogananda was talking about was that of love. That intuitive awareness based on our experience that God is with us and that God is the nearest of the near. So in all of our lives, in all of our spiritual lives and prayer lives, we're always trying to get out of that old mentality of beggary and thinking of God as separate. And it's like think of it as like this evolution of consciousness and our own consciousness, where our prayers, and we're thinking of this evolution from beggary to demand, some of the concepts you might think of as God as being not far, but near, and our prayers not being just about ourselves, but more the greater self in all. As Yogananda, and it's not wrong to pray for ourselves and things we need, but as Yogananda said, the highest prayer is, give me thyself, that I may give thee to all. And in that unselfishness, we actually get more than we could ever imagine. Recently, Nanda Devi and I, this past May, we were in Lourdes, France. Lourdes is where the Divine Mother appeared 18 times to Bernadette Subaru in around, I think, 1858. And she was out collecting wood for her family, for warmth. And Bernadette was collecting wood by this area, which was known as like the local dump. And all of a sudden, she sees this she called the lady, this magnificent lady. And she appeared 18 times. And at one of these times, she said that there's a spring, and if you dig, you'll find this spring. And shortly after that, when people would start to come to Lourdes, they would go to that spring, and there were many healings that occurred. So now, there are 6 million people a year that go to Lourdes, France, for healings from the healing waters and to pray for others. So when Nanda Devi and I went there, after being there for a few days, it was amazing to see because about 20,000 people descended on Lourdes. And it was difficult in some ways for us personally, but very inspiring in another way because these 20,000 people were military folks from 40 different countries. And it was a military pilgrimage for peace, to pray for peace. You would even see these military men, kind of women marching around. It looked like they were holding like a cannon as they walked. But it was actually a candle, a massive candle that would like burn for weeks. But there's the grotto there in Lourdes where people would pray. And you just this beautiful image of Mary that was created so for people could just go. And it was hard to get a moment of quiet, but once you did, you could really feel power coming from that statue. And it was amazing. Even where there's the healing baths where you could go in and they used to dunk you in the water, but now they just do something called the water gesture, where you can drink some of the water and rub it on your hands and wash your face with it. And there was a power there. As many as people there was there, they created such a beautiful vibration that you really felt a deep sacredness there. But what was also interesting was just near the grotto, there was, I forget the name of it, but basically it was a medical building to investigate miracles, which is pretty amazing. Since 1858, there's been about 7,000 documented miracles that have happened at Lourdes. But only 71 of those were actually approved by this medical research investigative service of the Catholic Church. And so we went, Nanda Devi and I went, and we spoke to one of the doctors. And they said, if you have a miracle, you come in, you can submit a form, and we'll investigate it. And so we heard the story of the last lady who was approved as number, I believe, 71, that after 7 or 8 years of medical professionals sharing their studies, they said, okay, this is a true miracle that medical science has no exclamation for. We call this a miracle, okay? And so there was this lady, she was a nun, and her prognosis was full paralysis. And so she goes to Lourdes, and she was asked, why did you go to Lourdes? She said, I wasn't going there to pray for myself. I wasn't the one who needs the prayers. All the sick and the enfeebled, they're the ones that need the prayers. And she was the one who was healed. Isn't that so beautiful? And, not everybody might. There was another story of a person who went there. He had a man, he had cerebral palsy, and he went 18 times to Lourdes for healing. And he never got that healing he thought he wanted. But he said, I got the healing I needed because I was somebody who was extremely bitter and angry, and now I only have love in my heart. So you just never know the power of prayer and how it can work. And for us, of course, when we pray, we want to know that our prayers are being heard by God and that they are effective. And that's what these teachings of self-realization can do, that our prayers can be effective when they're applied in the right way. And what we have to do is just kidding. What we need to do is we have to fix our broken mental microphone. I think you got it. Because if we're trying to send out a message, this prayer demand to God, and our mental microphone is blocked and there's too much static in there, that message can't get through as clearly because there's too much restlessness and such. Swami Kriyananda was saying that he once had a relative who their child was going through a major health challenge. And this relative said, I was so desperate. I was praying so much. But the whole time I was praying for my child, I was thinking about what I was going to be cooking for dinner and what I was going to be doing the next day. And I was so frustrated with that. And that's so common. I often, in my prayers, when I pray before meditation, sometimes I'll repeat the names of the masters again and again until I'm doing it with that concentration. But I was recently, Nanda Devi and I recently did a workshop on affirmations, and I found this study that was recently done that said that most people during their waking hours have about 70,000 self-talk thoughts a day. 70,000. And they said, can you guess what percentage of those are negative? 80%. And these are just thoughts that are kind of going on in the back of our consciousness. So if you break that down to how many thoughts is that per minute, it's around 70 some or so, meaning about 50 some or so of those thoughts are negative. All that to say, we need to repair our mental microphone so that the thoughts that we're putting out not only are positive, but we need to clear and calm the static of our minds. And that's why, as Yogananda said, when we do our prayers, when we do our prayer demands, we have to calm our minds enough so from that calmness, and we've established ourselves in the presence of God so that once we've established ourselves in feeling God's presence as peace, as calmness, as deep joy, that is the time that we can demand to God. Because that's the time that we've revived our sonship and daughtership with God, and our prayers can be more effective. The other day, a group of us were meditating on Friday night in the Crystal Hermitage Dome. And this is the first time consciously. Usually I would always think of prayer and meditation as kind of like the separation of church and state, and okay, I'm going to meditate and then I'm going to pray. But this time I was trying to really consciously hold on to that bliss I had just felt and cultivated through meditation, and I consciously held on to it. and consciously offered that feeling into the prayer. And it took on a whole nother level of prayer. And I really felt like maybe for the first time in a while, my prayers were actually being heard, being received, that is. Because it wasn't just an absent-minded prayer. Yes, of course, God hears all prayers, but as the Master said, restless prayers He might not hear as much or respond to as much. So, Yogananda said, the world has done enough fruitless chanting and praying. Loud prayers are helpful in congregations if practiced with deep concentration and devotion. But usually when a person voices his prayers, instead of mentally whispering to him, they are said in parrot fashion, while the mind is occupied with something else. God knows this. He does not answer when His name is taken in vain. So that's why we need to repair our mental microphone by first, before we pray, meditate. And for those of you who are new Kriya initiates, Yogananda said a very wonderful thing. He said that your prayers can become up to 100 times more effective after practicing Kriya Yoga. That's not bad. And that's really what we're going for here. So what happens is, I'll tell a story. Several years ago, I was needing some extra income, and I was over at the Expanding Light Temple for a longer meditation, and I thought, I'm going to really pray. I had an affirmation, and I was really praying. I didn't have the techniques of affirmation or prayer down, but what I did was I just let Divine Mother have it. And I was just praying with everything I got, with deeper and deeper concentration, alternating that deeper concentration with feeling and putting out a prayer demand. And it got to the point in this, I don't know if it was an affirmation or prayer, it just was an aspirational yearning and just deep longing. And I got to a point in that I felt the words I was saying. Yogananda said that our words must be filled with sincerity and conviction and faith and devotion. And when they're said in that way, they become highly explosive vibration bombs that can explode the rocks of difficulties. And I really felt like there was another power there that was helping in this sense. And I was really praying. Basically, I was praying for extra income through a job. So after this meditation, in a half an hour of just feeling like my mind was going to burst, such was my prayer demand, I walk out of the temple and somebody was waiting for me to offer me a job. And obviously I was quite stunned. And it was a job that a half an hour earlier, if he would have offered to me before this prayer demand, I probably wouldn't have taken it because of the nature of the job. But I thought, well, I can't go back now. I prayed for it, God gave it to me, and it was a blessing because I had to take care of somebody who wasn't able to take care of themselves. And yes, it helped me in my prison needs, but it helped me on much a deeper level because it just helped me get out of myself in the service to others. And so, prayers are effective when they're said with these right words, when the words are said not just, as Yogananda said, paper bullets being shot out of a toy gun, but they really have the vibration of that sincerity and really a soul force behind it. My sister used to ask me to tell her that I loved her, and I would say, I love you. And she said, no, say it like you mean it. And I would try again. But Padre Pio, the great Catholic saint, Nanda Devi and I just finished a book, and I think many of you have read it. Naya Swami Jyotish mentioned this book a while ago called Padre Pio na I, and it's so inspiring. And Padre Pio was known for having the stigmata, and many miracles were associated with him. And this book that we're reading about Padre Pio is from one of his spiritual sons. And his spiritual son would always want to spend time with Padre Pio in an area called San Giovanni Rotondo. And this son of his was once needing to go to Naples, which is about a 2.5 drive away from Padre Pio. He needed to go there to go to school for his exams. I think he was going to be a lawyer. And so he would try to come back as often as he could to get Padre Pio's blessings. And Padre Pio said, you don't have to keep coming all the time. Just be in Naples, and just anytime you need prayers, you need assistance, just send me your guardian angel. Go into a church and send me your guardian angel. Guardian angel is something in Catholicism that you send to ask for prayers and assistance. And so this man, Adolfo Affogato, not Affogato, that's a cafe drink with ice cream. Adolfo, I can't remember his last name, but Adolfo was, he was really desperate. He needed to pass this major exam. And so Adolfo goes not into one church, but he goes into 5 churches and sends his guardian angel to Padre Pio in 5 different churches. Then he gets to the time of his exam, and he said, okay, I need all the help I can get. So he puts a picture of Padre Pio in the back of his book for extra blessing. So he gets the results. He gets a perfect 30, which is the highest score that you can get. He goes back to Padre Pio, and Padre Pio says, looks like you've gotten a 30. But I told you to meditate. I told you to send me your guardian angel once, not 5 times in 5 different churches. And by the way, you think you can be trickery on your exam by putting a picture of me. Naughty, naughty, naughty. And of course, Adolfo was just stunned. He had seen the miracles of Padre Pio, but this was just this another instance of just the greatness of this man. And so he was stunned, and so many miracles were associated with Padre Pio. And he once said, people asked him, how are all these things able to happen? He had the stigmata, the wounds of Christ on his hands and on his feet. Actually, I'm not sure if it was on his feet, but he did, yeah. And he been known to bilocate. He had telepathy. Many, many prayers were answered by his intercession. And he said, I'm a mystery even to myself. I don't know how these things happen. I simply pray. And Adolfo was saying that most of the time, he never saw Padre Pio without his rosary prayer beads. He was always praying. He said sometimes he would do 50 rosaries a day, and he was mostly in silence. Another monk was asking Padre Pio, why don't you ever talk? He said, I'm always talking to God in silence. And that's why, even those who were around Yogananda, his disciples, he always wanted them to have silence. And Swami Kriyananda's last year of his life, he wanted that silence. Because silence is the altar of spirit. And it's in silence, when we're quiet, if we're talking all the time, we can't hear those whispers from eternity that are coming. We must try to be as silent as we can. So Yogananda said something that's really helpful for me, because oftentimes maybe we get caught up in daily life with wanting to pray. Okay, I have to pray at this time, in the morning or in the evening, at kind of like formal times of the day. But remember, the new consciousness of self-realization in these teachings is trying to break down the barriers between shoulds and should-nots, times we need to pray and times not, but just seeing the consciousness of spirit as this river that is always flowing, and we don't want to dam it up by, you got to do it in certain ways. And we're just praying with our heart. Yes, formal prayers are good, but more, God responds to that upward yearning and aspirational yearning of our souls. And so Yogananda said, pray in mental whispers. And sometimes I hear at Ananda, I get overwhelmed by all the prayers that people need prayers. The world situation needs prayers. Our nation needs prayers. Politician needs prayers. How do we keep it all in our consciousness? If we just hold prayer to times when we meditate. That's why we need to mentally whisper all the time. One time some friends were in India and at the airport, and Mother Teresa was there. And they went up to Mother Teresa and they said, thank you so much for all that. We're so inspired by your work. And they talked about Ananda, and they said, please pray. And she said, I will pray. I will pray for you. They walked away, they turned around, and already she was praying. That's what we need to do. Always, just as when we have a desire in our consciousness for whatever it is, it's always revolving in the back of our mind, no matter what we're doing. Imagine how our life would change, how our 80% of our negative self-talk thoughts would change if we replace that negative thoughts or just whatever with prayer, with those prayerful thoughts. And then, as the chant would say, God and I are never apart. Yogananda writes about mental whispers. An unceasing demand for anything mentally whispered with unflinching zeal and unflagging courage and faith develops into a dynamic power which so influences the behavior of consciousness, subconsciousness, and superconsciousness powers of man that the desired object is gained. A mental whisper to achieve its object must be undaunted by reverses and unceasing in its performance. Then it will materialize. And he goes on to say, and this is what I think is the hope really for all of us. Maybe you're new to Ananda, maybe you have a hard time meditating, maybe you don't meditate at all, but you really want to put out that prayer demand within you to help bring goodness and positivity into this world. Yogananda said, you can ease your conscience by claiming that pressure of business prevents you from praying and meditating. But you can have no excuse for not offering him deep mental whispers at any time, in the temple of activity or on the altar of silence. No matter what you may be doing, you are always free to whisper your love to God until you consciously receive his response. This is the surest way to contact him in the mad rush of present-day life. We don't need to have formal prayers. We don't have to pray in this certain way at certain times, but we just have to have that deep feeling of the presence of God within us, and from that presence, with all of our heart, with all of our mind, with all of our soul, with all of our strength, we just, like a great volcano within us, we offer that aspiring prayer demand up to God, and it will be received. Om Guru.
He who clothes the field with lilies,
he who feeds the birds of the air,
he who floods the hills with sunshine,
he whose love all creatures share,
will he not clothe us? Will he not feed us?
are we not like them, his own?
Fill your chalice at his fountain. Know that you live not alone. Know that you live not alone.
Isis is the divine mother aspect of God in the religion of ancient Egypt. Swami Kriyananda wrote this song after meditating in the temple of Isis at Aswan.
Still your mind if you want to pray. Send all cares far away. Sing and love's ever near. Isis comes, await the day. Isis comes, await the day. Mother comes, await the day.
Your mind if you want to pray. Send all cares far away. Sing that love's ever near. Isis comes, await the day. Isis comes, await the day. Mother comes, await the day.
Still your thy